Hello.
And Mrs. Carol Smith, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
May I say how delighted we are to be on Passion. We've looked forward to speaking to an African television station for decades. This is something we have looked forward to for such a long time, and we are so happy to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Aaron Smith was a young, bright, and principled Oxford University graduate who was recruited by the Colonial Office and posted to Nigeria. He took his final examination a year ahead of his class. He also married Mrs. Carol Smith, whom he met while they were both at Oxford University. Together they went to Nigeria, where they had their 2 children. Mr. Aaron Smith, you were featured in a program recently by BBC Radio 4,
Yes.
titled Document,
Yes.
and that was hosted by Mr. Mike Thompson.
Yes.
You are alleged that the British government rigged the first and most important election in the history of Nigeria in 1959 in favor of the North. Am I correct?
Yes.
How long were you in Nigeria for?
From 1955 to 1960. And we were based in Lagos. I was on the staff of the Department of Labour. I was largely occupied with employment problems, all the employment exchanges, and statistics and international reports, and was kept pretty busy. I was also stationed in Lagos in charge of the capital and the port. I was the port labour officer as well, and I also devised a port labour scheme and later a social security scheme, which was one of the first in Africa, which guaranteed workers some income after they'd finished work. It was a providence scheme. As I say, it was called the National Providence Scheme, and I was very proud to have put that on the statute book.
I was going to ask you what your role is. You've mentioned 3 important. Is there any particular name given to your office while you were there?
Just labour officer.
I was a labour officer, a senior civil servant.
Okay.
I only intended to stay in Lagos initially for 2 tours of duty. Although, because of this conflict with the elections, there were difficulties. Actually, government wouldn't let me leave the civil service. They were determined that I should stay in the civil service after my 2 tours. And I was offered very considerable incentives, including a knighthood, to stay and work for government. Primarily this was because I had access to state secrets. I learned, and the Governor-General himself confirmed this to me, that the elections were rigged, contrived. The intention was that the North should rule Nigeria. Even in '56, the Northern leaders were very proud and were saying, if they couldn't run Nigeria, never mind elections. They might not join Nigeria. They might leave. And we all thought, well, how would they survive? There were no industries. There's not a great deal of agriculture, some groundnuts in the north. This wasn't very practical at all. And then it was, the Governor-General seemed to be thinking that the North couldn't, even if it won an election, rule Nigeria by itself. The South wouldn't stand for that. So there had to be a partner, either the Igbos in the east or the Yoruba in the west, to team up with the North. What he didn't want was for the 2 southern parties, the Igbo and the Yoruba, to team up to form the government, because he believed the North wouldn't tolerate that and talked about leaving the federation. So as I learned, in a small way at first, but very rapidly I learned about the election fixing, and as I say, this was confirmed to me by the Governor-General. He actually said that he wanted me to know the truth, because he wanted me to know how much trouble I was in.
You mentioned statistics. You were collecting figures. Yes. Is that for labor and unemployed people only, or general?
Primarily, but obviously my interest was in the population
of
generally.
Nigeria.
Yes, and Awolowo, the Yoruba leader of the action group,
yep.
and Chief Enaharo, they too, other people were saying, where are all these millions of people in the north? Where are they? We're going up there to campaign. We want to know, you know. And you see all these, you know, thousands of miles of not very developed countryside, and yet the northerners are claiming that their voting registration figures are larger than in the south, you know, larger, far more people up there. Well, actually, if you went through the Igbo land, you know, Enugu and that, you saw lots and lots of people. If you went to Ibadan, again, Ibadan teeming, you know, with millions of people. But we didn't actually see many northerners, and obviously not many northerners at that time came to Lagos. So this did arouse suspicion. Now, the Europeans, you know, not stupid, we are watching what's going on in Nigeria, and we too are beginning to feel there's something not quite right here, that maybe the elections are not going to be as straightforward as they're meant to be. Nigeria was being described as the showcase of democracy, and it was expected that the nationalist leaders would win through. But actually, when the election results were announced by the Governor-General, before the vote was even in, he didn't vote, didn't count for that, he didn't wait for that. I have to tell you, the British were counting the votes, and the British cannot be trusted. They look after their friends. Loyalty is the big thing for the British. And we were friends with the emirs of the north. We looked on people like Enaharo and Awolowo as rather dangerous people. They might even be communists. That's ridiculous, actually. They couldn't be communists in 1,000 years. But this was a sort of thing that was being said. And we were, Europeans, were getting a bit worried about all this. It wasn't quite the honest, straightforward election that we were hoping for.
Apart from Professor Anderson and Dr. Patrick Wilmot that supported your submission on the rigged election, there were other people who also served in the colonial office in your days. I mean, who opposed to this submission?
Initially, I was warned of what was going on by my senior officer, a Major Bunker. I didn't know, and I knew that the Governor-General had directed me to take all the office staff of the Ministry of Labour to help Chief Okoti Igbo in politicking in Warri. And this was most irregular, and I refused to do this. Having refused an order, I know what the drill is. You resign. I resign my post. That is the proper thing to do. What they did then was rather devious. They persuaded me to withdraw my resignation, and when I did, they sacked me. It didn't go through, but I thought it was a bit low after I'd resigned and was prepared to leave the country. This was not very nice behaviour. They later withdrew this and said that I had been of some service to the state, and actually commended me for what I had done, and said I could leave Nigeria with splendid testimonials, and we shook hands on this. And this was done with the recognition of the Deputy Governor-General, Sir Ralph Grey. And then I left Nigeria the first time and took up a job as a personnel officer, a very big job, with the Esso refinery. And then government came after me, declared that I was a traitor, and I had betrayed the British people, ought to be imprisoned. And I lost that job. And then they came to me again and said it's all been a big mistake, dreadful mistake. I'm a jolly decent chap, you know, Oxford chap, and they put me on a plane straight back to Nigeria where I'd make up for the time I'd been away. There was a great deal of good work for me to do, and we fell for this. We shouldn't have gone back, but we did.
Now, if you recall what you said about the role of the Governor General and the attitude of the British government in particular, regarding the fear that Awolowo, Okutiebo, and the lot of them from the south are dangerous, is there a particular reason? Why the fear from the British government? Is it that they don't want to release or relinquish Nigeria? They still want to control Nigeria?
They knew that the North would do as they said after independence. If it had any, the North would just, because it was their habit, they liked the British, whereas the nationalists were an unknown factor. Actually, when they took the flag down and hoisted the Nigerian flag, not one of the major nationalist politicians was there. They weren't even on the platform. This was incredible. These were the people who had sought independence. The people in the North didn't want independence. They didn't want the British to leave. So this was a farce. And for most Europeans who were very close and watching this, we were disgusted. We thought this really had been manipulated, this election. It was unworthy. It was unworthy of the British people, this. This was no honest, straightforward thing that you would expect Britain, the mother of parliaments, to do. This was cheap and low and criminal. And I opposed it. And I opposed it then, and I've opposed it ever since. And I'm telling you the truth. And I was warned, if I told you this state secret, my life could be forfeit.
Earlier on, you said the British government wanted the North in alliance with either of the southern region, either with the Yorubas or with the Igbos.
But
without which they cannot
they can't do it
rule the country.
The problem was that Awolowo was a highly principled man.
Okay.
You didn't talk to Awolowo about squalid deals and fixing things. Awolowo was not that kind of person. If you read his books, this man was a world statesman. And his young lieutenant, Chief Enaharo, was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. However, they did do a deal with Zik, Dr. Azikiwe,
okay,
from the east. Dr. Azikiwe, there was this big problem in Nigeria. It's the same big problem in America and in Britain. How do you get funds to fight elections? The candidates in Nigeria had no money, but they did have marketing boards, which were a kind of semi-nationalized industry. And they borrowed money from the marketing boards. But there was a suspicion that Dr. Azikiwe, who has formed his own bank, the African Continental Bank, was actually bankrupt. But he was borrowing very large sums of money from the marketing boards and not necessarily repaying the loans. We knew this. We had a great secret service. All the politicians' phones were tapped. All the politicians' mail was opened. Everything that any major politician did in Nigeria, we knew in hours. We watched. We knew all that was going on.
Are you saying, in essence, that Dr. Azikiwe took money?
He was blackmailed by the British to do our bidding. We told Dr. Azikiwe that he could go to prison
if
an inquiry was carried out into his bank and his financial circumstances. However, we would not want to be vindictive if Dr. Ezekwe was cooperative in helping forward the plans that we had made in the best interests of Nigeria. Dr. Ezekwe has nothing in common with the northern politicians. He loathed the northern politicians. But Dr. Ezekwe went north and did as he was told. And what he was promised was this: the real power, effective power, would be in the hands of the northern emirs. However, it would look great if the president was Dr. Ezekwe and he was given a field marshal's uniform and an admiral's uniform. He asked, please, could he have a row of medals? But they said, well, no, that was a bit difficult, to get the medals. So when the ambassadors started arriving, he was known to be asking people from foreign countries, perhaps they had a medal for his uniform. We thought this was terrible, but it was said that this happened. He was very vain. And for a time, he functioned as first the Governor General, and then when Nigeria became a republic, as the president. But he had no power. And when he did try to tell the army, he said, I'm the field marshal, the army has got to do with this. They said, hey, you're just a ceremonial figure. You have no power. The Prime Minister, Balewa, gives us our orders. So there was a feeling then that there was going to be trouble. And then it was because the Awolowo and the Action Group had become the official opposition. What we British wondered, how could they win